Beowulf in 3D. I went to see this in 3D at the IMAX back when it came out, and I slept through most of it. Apparently, as my friend informed me after, I snored a bit too. Now, this is not a comment on the movie. I was just tired. I relate it to say I was curious on what I had missed out on. So this was high on my 3D Blu-ray wish list when I got a 3D TV, which was only a few years ago. Unfortunately, this had been a long out-of-print German-only release. Happily, in the present day, Japan has their own version, and this is what I watched today. Now, aside from the back cover, there is nothing on the disc itself to indicate that it came from Japan. It's English, it's one disc, only the 3D version, but includes all the extras in 2D, which are still a lot of fun. It's amazing to see how elaborate motion tracking used to be. This was the second of 3 animated motion tracking movies made by Robert Zemeckis, and these 3 movies were always meant to be seen in 3D, and it shows. When we follow a crane shot from a table up to the ceiling where there are some mice running around, then leaping out to follow a bird through the trees and beyond, every angle of that sequence was chosen because it looks cool in 3D. Not only that, but there are moments that actually look warped and strange if you were to watch it in 2 dimensions, because the positioning and composition are created from a stereo perspective. There is an example of this that is, well, absurd. The main character, a warrior named Beowulf, is confronted by a soldier who thrusts his spear between Beowulf's eyes, and although the spear shoots entirely out of the screen, the soldier, the horse, and everything else is virtually flat. If you look closely, it's a few pixels of difference, but it's basically a flat background. Although there's an enormous pop-out here, which is fun, the shot comes across as gimmicky. It also showcases this movie's extensive use of flat backgrounds, which was also done in Polar Express. Fortunately, the flat backdrops are typically very clever, and looking for where the stereo meets the flat matte is kind of fun. Here we see a better example. Notice how this 3D bridge seamlessly attaches itself to the tower in the background, which is completely flat. Later, we see this row of archers where only the first section is in stereo. Once the arrows fly, everything goes completely flat, aside from a couple of arrows in the foreground. But really, in the moment, your eye doesn't care. The feel is there. Also, when you're flying around, if you're watching this on an enormous screen, like you would be in the IMAX theater, certain scenes when you're sweeping around, the size of the screen takes over, and the stereo is less important. Now, I've never read the source material, and what I saw in the first 10 minutes or so, when I originally saw it at the IMAX before I fell asleep, gave me the impression that this was kind of like an early Friday the 13th or Halloween or Nightmare on Elm Street. It begins with a monster who isn't so much out for revenge as he is just bothered by people, bothered by their noise, like the ultimate cranky neighbor who hates your kids, your dogs, and the sound of your very footsteps. This movie doesn't keep you waiting long for the monster, Grendel, they call him. His rampages are a ghastly delight to see in 3D. There are a number of factors that help the stereo during these rampages. The editing is relatively hands-off, allowing us to soak in the action from a comfortable perspective. And with well-adjusted eyes, we get body parts and debris shooting out at us like fireworks. Having seen this now, I realize that my notion of this being a forerunner of slasher horror may not be wrong, but it's really just a premise for a deeper story here. I suppose it's meant to be an analogy for the chickens coming home to roost. I'm not sure what's in the source material, but I felt this could have used a scene that made the explosive end a bit more personal. something to indicate a material rejection of an unwanted stepson. I don't see that story told very often, though it's a powerful one. In my meager experience, the most hatred I've ever seen expressed between people was between step-siblings. And I've seen a few examples of it. Something very raw and primal there. But here you sort of have to fill in some blanks with your imagination to appreciate the anger being expressed. Part of that may be the general stiffness of the facial animation, which hadn't quite developed yet. If you compare this to A Christmas Carol, there's just an incredible improvement in that area between these two films. And this really is a marker in time. It's unfortunate that this is not readily available. This should really exist along with Polar Express and A Christmas Carol as a 3D box set, if for no other reason, as just a historical document for the development of motion graphics and, well, frankly, stereo movie making.